Look, I'm not saying the galactic community's entire classification system is a bureaucratic dumpster fire held together by committee decisions and ancient prejudices, but I'm also not saying that. The whole mess started when the Harmonious Accord, yes, that's really what they called their ship, like they were compensating for something, made first contact with Earth. Specifically, with a research station in Antarctica, because of course they did. You'd think a species capable of faster-than-light travel would have the sense to land somewhere warmer, but apparently the Vrelny navigational system considered remote enough that nobody will shoot at us immediately, more important than temperature survivable without thermal suits. Commander Zixthor, pronounced exactly like it's spelled, which is to say, not at all how you'd think, stood in what passed for a diplomatic chamber aboard the Harmonious Accord, reviewing the preliminary planetary survey data with growing concern that was rapidly approaching existential dread. "Run the atmospheric composition analysis again," he said to his science officer, a six-limbed Quilarian named Reshkith, who looked like someone had given a very ambitious caterpillar delusions of grandeur. "Sir, I've run it 4 times. The results are consistent." "That's what concerns me. Earth's atmosphere was, by galactic standards, a chemical weapon. 21% oxygen. The Vrelny required 7%. Most civilized species topped out at 12. Anything above 15 was considered toxic, leading to cellular degradation and an unfortunate tendency to burst into flames at inconvenient moments. But it got better. Or worse. Depending on your perspective and whether you were currently trying to breathe. The planet's classification kept escalating with each new data point. Nitrogen levels that would cause narcosis in 4 species. Atmospheric pressure that would crush a Deltharian. Magnetic field strong enough to interfere with standard navigation equipment. Weather patterns that included frozen water falling from the sky in hexagonal crystalline structures, and rotating columns of air moving at speeds that would dismember most known sentience. "What's our current classification estimate?" Zixthor asked, already regretting the question. Reshkith's forward eyes swiveled in a way that suggested he was also regretting it. "Class 11 Death World, sir. Possibly 12 if we factor in the microbial diversity." Microbial diversity? They have bacteria that can survive in volcanic vents, frozen tundra, radioactive waste, and something called a university dormitory refrigerator. Though that last one might be an error in translation. Zixthor made a note to fire whoever was in charge of the translation algorithms. Then he made a second note to give them a raise when he realized the translation was probably accurate. "And there's intelligent life down there?" "Oh yes. They call themselves humans. Bipedal, carbon-based, endoskeletal. Standard body plan, mostly." "Mostly?" "They have this unusual respiratory system where they pull air into internal organs, extract the oxygen, and expel the rest. It's remarkably inefficient." Zixthor blinked his tertiary eyelids. That's standard for most species." "Yes, but they do it on a planet where the oxygen concentration would kill us. It's like they're constantly breathing fire that just hasn't ignited yet." The commander was beginning to understand why first contact protocols recommended strong sedatives for the diplomatic team. Down on Earth, at McMurdo Station, Dr. Felix Ashford was having a perfectly normal day by Antarctic research standards, which meant something had already gone catastrophically wrong and it wasn't even lunch yet. "The satellite dish is down again," announced his colleague, Dr. Helena Okonkwo, with the weary resignation of someone who had chosen to work in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth and was now reaping the consequences of her life choices. "Did you try hitting it?" "Felix, I have a PhD in atmospheric physics." "That's not a no." Before Helena could respond with what was surely going to be a scathing comment about his methodology, every electronic device in the station simultaneously emitted a sound that could best be described as what a whale might sound like if it learned to speak dial-up modem. "That's new," Felix observed with the kind of scientific detachment that comes from spending 9 months in a frozen wasteland where novelty is in short supply. The sound resolved into something approximately resembling language, if language had been designed by committee and then translated through 12 intermediary species who all had different numbers of vocal cords. "Greetings, humans of Earth. We come in peace. Please do not be alarmed. This is first contact. Repeat, first contact. We are friendly. Very friendly. So friendly. Please don't hurt us." Felix and Helena exchanged looks. They sound terrified, Helena said. I mean, we're in Antarctica. Maybe they think penguins are the dominant species and they're worried about being pecked to death. Felix? I'm just saying, if I were an alien and my first view of Earth was a bunch of flightless birds waddling around in tuxedos in -40-degree weather, I'd have questions about the planetary hierarchy. The harmonious accord landed approximately 3 hours later, which was actually impressive response time considering they'd spent 2 of those hours arguing about whether the humans' casual acceptance of their frozen wasteland habitat meant they were too dangerous to approach directly. Zixthor descended the boarding ramp with the kind of caution usually reserved for bomb disposal or family dinners with contentious relatives. His environmental suit was rated for Class 10 death worlds, which meant it should theoretically keep him alive for up to 6 hours on Earth before something inevitably went wrong. He made it 4 steps before he fell over. Earth's gravity was 1.4 times what the Vrelny had evolved under. It felt like someone had strapped a Vrelny-sized weight to his entire body and then asked him to do gymnastics. Felix jogged over, well, what Zixthor perceived as jogging, though the human claimed he was just walking quickly, and offered a hand up. You okay there, buddy? Zixthor stared up at the human towering above him. He watched the casual way this creature moved under gravity that was crushing him. He noticed that this human was standing outside in -20-degree temperatures wearing only 3 layers of clothing, like it was a mild inconvenience rather than an extinction-level event. Yes. Thank you. You are very large. Felix, who was 5'9" and had spent most of his life being described as average height, was delighted by this assessment. Yeah, we get that a lot. Well, I assume we'll get that a lot now that you're here. First alien species and all. I'm Felix. This is Helena. Welcome to Earth, please don't freeze to death. Zixthor managed to get upright with assistance from both humans and his suit's gravitational compensation field, which was now running at maximum capacity and would probably need to be replaced after this mission. Your planet is extreme, he managed. Oh, you should see it in summer, Helena said cheerfully. It gets up to -10 sometimes. Zixthor's translator helpfully informed him that she was joking, but the fact that -10 degrees was considered an improvement made him question whether the translator was functioning properly. The diplomatic meeting took place inside McMurdo Station, because Zixthor had politely but firmly refused to conduct negotiations outside in what he kept referring to as the death cold, and what the humans kept insisting was pretty mild for this time of year. Felix had broken out the good instant hot chocolate for the occasion. Helena had found some cookies that were only slightly stale. By Antarctic Research Station standards, this was practically a state dinner. So, Felix said, settling into a chair that creaked under Earth's gravity in a way that made Zixthor flinch. You're from space. Yes. That's pretty cool. It is actually quite temperature controlled aboard our vessels, yes. No, I mean, never mind. So what brings you to our frozen corner of the universe? Zixthor carefully extracted a data pad from his suit's storage compartment, which took longer than it should have because his hands were shaking from the effort of fighting Earth's gravity. We are representatives of the galactic community, a coalition of 3,417 sentient species spanning 12,000 systems. We have protocols for peaceful integration of developing civilizations into our trade networks, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. Sounds reasonable, Helena said. However, there is a complication. There always is, Felix muttered into his hot chocolate. Your planet has been preliminarily classified as a Class 11 or 12 death world, which means it is considered too dangerous for most species to visit without extensive protective equipment and medical support. This complicates integration. Felix blinked. Wait, Earth is a what now? Zixthor pulled up a holographic display that showed Earth rotating ominously in space, covered in red warning indicators like it was being attacked by an army of very concerned safety inspectors. Death world. Your atmospheric oxygen levels alone would be fatal to 63% of known species. Your gravity is crushing. Your weather patterns include phenomena that we classify as natural disasters. You have active plate tectonics, which means your ground literally shifts and breaks apart. Your oceans are acidic enough to dissolve Quilarian exoskeletons. Your native fauna includes creatures that can kill humans, the dominant species, through methods ranging from venom to physical trauma to viral infection. Okay, but most of those animals are pretty small, Felix pointed out. We're not exactly being hunted by megafauna anymore. You have creatures called mosquitoes that kill 700,000 humans per year. Well, when you put it that way, you have other creatures called hippopotamuses that kill 500 humans per year, despite the fact that humans know they are dangerous and actively try to avoid them. Look, hippos are just... You have sea creatures called box jellyfish that are transparent, nearly invisible, and can kill a human in under 5 minutes with venom so potent that victims sometimes die before they can call for help. Helena raised a hand. To be fair, those only live in certain regions. The fact that you have regional death zones is not the defense you think it is. Felix leaned back in his chair, which creaked again in a way that made Zixthor's survival instincts scream. Okay, I'm starting to see why you might be concerned. But we're doing fine. Humans have been around for, 200,000 years? We've figured out how to deal with our planet's quirks. That brings me to my next concern, Zixthor said, pulling up another display. Your species' adaptation to this environment is alarming. The hologram showed a human anatomy diagram that looked like it had been marked up by a very disturbed xenobiologist. Your bones are dense enough to support your body under this gravity while remaining light enough for mobility. Your muscles are overdeveloped compared to species from more reasonable worlds. Your cardiovascular system is capable of operating at pressures that would burst Vrelny hearts. You can survive blood loss that would kill most species. You have an immune system so aggressive that it sometimes attacks your own body. You have a pain tolerance that our psychologists find genuinely concerning. Are you complimenting us? Helena asked uncertainly. I am explaining why several members of the galactic community have suggested we quarantine your entire planet and pretend we never found you. There was a long silence. That seems excessive, Felix said finally. Does it? Because I've been here for less than an hour and I've already had to recalibrate my suit's gravitational compensators twice. My temperature regulation is running at maximum capacity. And I keep seeing your security footage of something called an emperor penguin swimming under ice. And I'm having a crisis about what you people consider normal animal behavior. Penguins are adorable, Helena protested. They dive to depths that would crush most species while holding their breath for over 20 minutes in water cold enough to cause instant hypothermia. Yeah, they're really good at swimming. Zixthor made a sound that the translator couldn't parse, but which probably meant something like, "You're all insane and I want to go home." The diplomatic situation deteriorated from there, which is to say, it got significantly more entertaining from an outside perspective. Zixthor insisted on conducting a full planetary survey before making any recommendations to the galactic community. This meant visiting multiple biomes, which meant subjecting himself to the various ways Earth was trying to kill him on a rotating basis. Their first stop after Antarctica was the Amazon rainforest, because Felix had suggested it would be warmer and more comfortable for the Vrelny delegation. This was technically true in the same way that being set on fire is technically warmer than being frozen. The humidity, Zixthor gasped through his suit's emergency air filtration system, is trying to drown me. It's only 95%, Felix said, swatting at a mosquito with the casual violence of someone who had grown up in a world where insects were an omnipresent threat. Could be worse. How? Could be raining. As if on cue, the sky opened up and dumped approximately 4 inches of rain in 30 minutes, which was just nature's way of saying, "You thought you were having a bad day before?" They took shelter under a tree that was larger than the Harmonious Accord, which did nothing to comfort Zixthor about the relative scale of Earth's flora. "Your plants are carnivorous," he said, pointing at a pitcher plant that was absolutely not large enough to be a threat to anything bigger than an insect, but which his survival instincts insisted was personally targeting him. "Only some of them," Helena assured him. "Most of them just want sunlight and water. That one is eating an insect." "Well, yeah, that's what carnivorous means. Plants should not eat things. I mean, they're really more opportunistic feeders. They can photosynthesize just fine. The meat is more of a nutritional supplement." "Helena, you're not helping." The survey of the Amazon took 3 days, during which Zixthor learned about poisonous frogs, venomous snakes, parasitic fish that could swim up a human's urethra, which haunted him for weeks afterward, ants that could carry 50 times their body weight, spiders the size of dinner plates, and something called a kandiru that he refused to let anyone explain in detail after the first sentence. Classification upgrade to Class 12, he muttered into his recorder. Possibly 13. Flora and fauna are actively hostile. Indigenous population seems unconcerned, which suggests either extreme adaptation or collective psychosis. What was that? Felix called from where he was examining a tree frog that was bright blue, and according to his cheerful explanation, loaded with enough poison to kill 10 people. Nothing, just logging observations. Next they visited the Sahara Desert, because Zixthor wanted to see an environment that wasn't actively trying to drown him in either water or humidity. He lasted 45 minutes before declaring that he would rather take his chances with the Amazon. It's too hot, he complained from inside his suit, which was now running its cooling systems at maximum capacity. How do you survive here? We don't, really, Felix admitted. Not without water and shelter. The desert is pretty unforgiving. And yet humans lived here historically. Yeah, nomadic tribes and such. They figured it out. They figured it out, Zixthor repeated with the kind of emphasis that suggested his worldview was cracking. They figured out how to survive in an environment where the temperature differential between day and night is over 40 degrees, where water is scarce, where the sun's radiation can cause cellular damage, and where the sandstorms can strip flesh from bone. I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds bad. Because it is bad. They cut the desert visit short and moved on to the Himalayas, where Zixthor discovered that humans had decided to climb the tallest mountains on their planet for sport, despite the fact that the altitude contained less oxygen than most species required to maintain consciousness. There are frozen corpses up there that serve as trail markers, Helena explained helpfully while they stood at base camp. People just leave them there because it's too dangerous to retrieve the bodies. Zixthor stared at the mountain peak, where apparently multiple humans were currently attempting to reach the summit, despite the fact that it was known as the Death Zone, above 8,000 meters. Why? He asked. It was becoming his most common question. Because it's there, Felix offered. Also pride, sense of accomplishment, tax write-offs if you get sponsored. Your species climbs mountains that are actively killing you for tax purposes? No, they do it for pride. The tax thing is just a bonus. Zixthor updated his classification estimate to Class 13 and added a note that humans might be the universe's most aggressively suicidal species that had somehow survived anyway through sheer spite. The diplomatic delegation returned to McMurdo Station 3 weeks later, where Zixthor spent 6 hours compiling his report while occasionally making sounds of distress that his translator couldn't parse. Okay, Felix said, setting down mugs of hot chocolate that were becoming a tradition. What's the verdict? Are you going to quarantine us? Zixthor looked at him with all 4 eyes, which was the Vrelny equivalent of a very serious stare. Your planet is a Class 13 death world. Possibly 14 if I include the microbial threats and the fact that your sun is constantly bombarding you with radiation that causes your cells to mutate. The galactic community has protocols for this situation, which mostly involve establishing a remote trade outpost in your star system and hoping that you don't decide to leave your planet. That seems a bit harsh, Helena said. You're Deathworlders. You can survive conditions that would kill most of the galaxy. You've adapted to become persistence predators capable of chasing prey until it dies from exhaustion. Your species' preferred recreational activities include jumping out of aircraft with minimal safety equipment, diving to depths that would crush most beings, and climbing mountains in the death zone. You have martial arts that are specifically designed to kill other humans efficiently. You created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet and then pointed them at yourselves for 70 years as a diplomatic strategy. The Cold War was more complicated than, I don't care. The point is that you people are terrifying. You're friendly, yes. You make excellent hot chocolate. But you're also the kind of species that looks at a hostile environment and decides to adapt to it rather than finding somewhere more reasonable to live. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's nightmare fuel for most of the galactic community. Felix and Helena exchanged glances. So no trade agreements? Felix asked. Oh, we'll trade with you, Zixthor said, pulling up a contract on his datapad We're not stupid. Any species that can survive Earth can probably survive anywhere, which means you'll make excellent security forces, emergency responders, and hazardous environment workers. Half the jobs in the galaxy that are classified as extremely dangerous would probably be rated as mild inconvenience for humans. I'm sensing a but coming, Helena said. But you're staying classified as a death world, which means limited visitation rights, strict quarantine protocols for anyone leaving the planet, and a very large warning beacon in orbit that essentially says, "Here be humans, proceed with extreme caution." That's fair, Felix admitted. Also, we're going to need you to stop doing some of your more alarming recreational activities when we establish the trade station. Like what? Free climbing, base jumping, bull running, cave diving, proximity flying, shark cage diving, and something called parkour that looks like a suicide attempt with extra steps. Come on, parkour's not that dangerous. I watched a video of a human jumping between buildings over a 20-story drop while doing unnecessary flips. Yeah, but he made it. That's not the point. They negotiated for another 3 hours, eventually settling on a compromise where humans would agree to limit their most dangerous activities to Earth itself, and the galactic community would establish a trade station in orbit where species could do business without having to actually visit the planet's surface. Although, Zixthor added, if you could figure out a way to weaponize your world's hostility, there would be significant military contracts available. Weaponize Earth? Helena asked. Take the things that make your planet a nightmare and apply them strategically. Export your venomous creatures for security purposes. License your extreme weather patterns for defensive installations. Train your persistence predator tactics for tactical operations. The galaxy has never seen anything like humans before, and there's a market for that. That seems ethically questionable, Felix said. It's the galaxy. Ethics are complicated when you're dealing with 3,000 species who all have different moral frameworks. Some of them photosynthesize, for crying out loud. How do you establish universal ethics with species who experience consciousness differently? That's actually a good point. I know, I'm very smart. It's why they made me a commander. The Harmonious Accord departed Earth 3 days later, leaving behind a diplomatic packet that would make the next decade of human history significantly more interesting. Felix and Helena stood outside McMurdo Station, watching the alien ship vanish into orbit. So we're Death Worlders, Felix said. Apparently. And they're scared of us. Seems like it. But they still want to trade with us. Fear and economics make strange bedfellows. Felix nodded, sipping his hot chocolate and watching the stars. Think we should tell them about Australia? What about Australia? You know. The spiders. The snakes. The jellyfish. The octopuses that are venomous. The plants that cause pain so severe people have killed themselves. The fact that everything there is basically designed to murder you in creative ways. Helena considered this. Zixthor seemed pretty stressed already. Let's save that for the second contact. Fair enough? They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two humans on a death world that had shaped them into creatures that could survive anywhere, do anything, and somehow make it look easy in the process. Somewhere in orbit, Zixthor was filing his report and updating Earth's classification to a solid Class 13, possibly 14, with a note that humans were to be approached with caution, respect, and a healthy dose of fear. He also added a personal note that human hot chocolate was surprisingly good, and that he'd like to establish a trade agreement for that specifically, because even Deathworlders deserved some credit for their culinary achievements. The galactic community approved the report within a week, established the trade station within a month, and spent the next decade trying to figure out how to integrate a species that had basically been raised by a planet that was actively trying to kill them. Humans, for their part, took to the galactic stage with the same casual competence they brought to everything else. They became premier security contractors, emergency responders, extreme environment specialists, and general problem solvers for situations that other species considered impossible. They also absolutely did not mention the Australian continent until it became relevant, which it inevitably did when a Deltharian trade vessel made an emergency landing near Sydney and was promptly traumatized by a huntsman spider the size of a dinner plate. The subsequent reclassification of Earth as a Class 14 death world came with a strongly worded note from Zixthor that essentially read, "You people have an entire continent of nightmare fuel and you didn't think to mention it?" Felix sent back a reply that just said, "You didn't ask." And that, more or less, was how humanity joined the galactic community, classified as terrifying, respected for their competence, and approached with the kind of caution usually reserved for unexploded ordnance or diplomatic dinners with in-laws. The universe would never be quite the same. But at least the hot chocolate was good. Epilogue. 5 years later, the galactic community established a new job classification: Human Required Operations. It covered everything from rescue missions in Class 10+ environments to security details in hazardous zones to the increasingly popular extreme tourism industry, where wealthy aliens paid obscene amounts of money to be escorted around Earth by humans who could keep them alive long enough to see a sunset, pet a dog, and experience the existential terror of standing on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Felix Ashford became the chief human liaison for the galactic community's Earth Operations Division, which was a fancy way of saying he spent his time explaining to aliens why humans did things like skydiving and swimming with sharks and eating peppers that caused measurable pain. Helena Okonkwo became the director of the Extreme Environment Training Program, teaching aliens how to survive in conditions that humans considered normal and everyone else considered certain death. Zixthor got promoted to ambassador and spent most of his time filing reports about human activities that technically weren't violations of any treaties, but which gave his legal team stress headaches. They remained in regular contact, mostly because Felix kept sending him videos of Australian wildlife with subject lines like, "Guess what else we have?" And Zixthor kept responding with threat assessments that got more desperate with each new revelation. The galaxy learned to live with humans the same way humans had learned to live with Earth, with respect, caution, and a healthy acknowledgement that some things were just going to be terrifying no matter how much you prepared for them. And in the end, that was probably the most important lesson humanity taught the galactic community: that life was scary and dangerous and full of things that wanted to kill you. But you could face it anyway, adapt to it, maybe even make some friends along the way. You just had to be willing to laugh at the absurdity of it all while standing on a frozen continent at the bottom of the world, drinking hot chocolate with an alien who was terrified of penguins, and watching the stars with the knowledge that you came from a planet so hostile it made the rest of the galaxy nervous. And really, what could be more human than that? The end. If you enjoyed this story and want more cinematic sci-fi like this, support the channel. Click the link in my bio to help me keep these stories alive.